We're here in Orlando at the Summer Convention, Florida Bandmasters Association, and we have our latest inductee into the Roll of Distinction. Very proud to be able to interview Dr. Shelby Chipman from Florida A&M. He's now a Florida Legacy, and I understand you are from Florida originally.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tina, for this opportunity, and thank you, Florida Bandmasters Association, for this great honor that has been bestowed upon me. I'm in just complete awe that knowing the shoulders of giants of so many that have come before me that have done incredible work in our Florida schools and beyond, and to have this opportunity is just outstanding, and I'm just so grateful to everybody. And certainly, I was born and reared in Miami, Florida, all of my life. Grew up in the inner city for the most part, in Liberty City and Miami Carroll City, and of course, I'm the son of 4 siblings. My mother was a teacher, Ella Chipman. My father, unfortunately, passed and drowned. I'm the youngest of 4, and in Miami while fishing. But my mother was in the Dade County school system for 29 or 30 years as an elementary school teacher in the Little Haiti area. And she reared our 4 never remarrying, and certainly doing the kinds of things, working 2 jobs back in the day so that she can see the best for her students. 2 of us went to college and 2 of us went to the armed services, and just grateful for this opportunity.
Wow. Well, what instrument did you start on, and then how did it lead you to a teaching career, and how did you end up where you are?
Well, I tell you, Tina, I started off on the best instrument in wind and percussion family. So if you're looking at this, say it together, trumpet. Okay, so trumpet's my principal instrument, and I started in 4th grade in Miami. My uncle actually, who was an AME pastor, purchased me a York trumpet. They've been discontinued, of course. They're never to return, I'm sure. But he purchased me this trumpet that I started playing in the AME church when we would drive to his particular church where he was an AME pastor. And then I moved on to middle school, where I started in beginning band at Horace Mann Middle School under the late direction, that is, of Ferris Rhodes. And I continued after 3 years in the band at Horace Mann Middle School to Miami Northwestern for 4 years under the direction of Herbert Rhodes, his brother. So I was very fortunate to have the Rhodes brothers as my middle school and high school band director. And of course, the story goes on with participating in all the events on campus at Miami Northwestern, such as the concert band and the jazz band and the marching band. Of course, we were part of the PAVAC Arts program at Miami Northwestern, and ultimately that instrument led Dr. Junie White, who was conducting the Dade County Honors Band, of course, was director of bands at FAMU for many years and supporter and previous, of course, Roll of Distinction honoree, to provide me a scholarship to attend FAMU when he came down to recruit. So, long lineage of things that took place, but I'm very grateful for starting on the trumpet and, of course, getting the scholarship to attend FAMU, go off to college.
Well, after college, you began teaching.
Yes.
Where and then what?
Awesome. So my last performance with the Florida A&M Band was in Paris, France, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the Paris, France full circle that we had last year. But certainly that was summer '89. And so after I graduated from FAMU, completed my student teaching, I went back down to Miami, where I was an assistant band director for 1 year at Miami American High School. And I was assistant to Reuben Cooper, my good colleague and friend, and we attended the same church in Miami, St. Paul AME in Liberty City. And so I worked with him for 1 year and taught beginning band, and I taught eurythmics, which were the auxiliary members, and I also taught the piano classes. And then after 1 year, I received a call about an opportunity that would be open at Miami Central High School, where many of you know the name of Kenneth Talbot. He's also a former recipient of this same honor, Roll of Distinction. And of course, he was at Central for many years and did an amazing job there. And of course, I followed him, and I was at Miami Central for 9 years. And of course, we started off the band program with about 60 students that were there. And we built the program through, again, the good old FMEA, the good old FBA system of year-round participation, taking your students to marching band evaluation, taking your students to the solo and ensemble festival, jazz band festival, district, state, other performance opportunities for the students in the community. And subsequently, I got the call to go to FAMU to be on that staff after 9 years.
Wow.
So a total of 10 years teaching in the Dade County Public School System.
And circles come around to
Circles come around, being district chair and being
Mhm.
district secretary over the years, and working with so many great middle and high school teachers.
Well, while you were in middle and high school and then on to college, what particular challenges have you had to meet and overcome?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because the first challenge, even going back to my public school teaching days, although there have been many successes at Miami Central High School, there was a period where there was some disrest there. And so one of the reasons I was hired there was to kind of change the environment, change the culture, establish the program, set some goals and expectations for the students in the community that I knew were there because of the history of that community, the population of people that were there. And so my first day there was probably first and second day were probably two of the most upsetting, because they keyed my car and they bust my window out.
Oh.
My first couple of days at Miami Central, because I went there and I was determined, future teachers, I was determined to change the culture, change the mindset. And I wasn't going to allow thugs off the street to come in and do what they were doing, which is gambling in the band room and setting a bad precedent for anybody that may want to have considered going inside the band room. This is the same old Central that would have maybe 15, 20 all-staters under Kenneth Talbot. But again, different directors coming in, lack of band one year, music supervisors having to be the band directors over the years, etc. And so I went in with the challenge of being able to meet that challenge, which was to make sure we establish the right environment, the right spirit. And so I guess the thugs, for lack of a better expression, said, well, Dr. Chipman, or Mr. Chipman at the time, we're going to show you. But I outlasted them with the support of the administration and with the support of the parents who saw where my heart was, saw what my intent was, knew of my qualifications as a former trumpet section leader at FAMU and student conductor. And so they rallied behind me. Then you think about 7, 8 years later, before I left there, the band marched in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and we participated in Concert Bands of America in Indianapolis. And, we had 2 Silver Night winners, which is a big deal down in South Florida, meaning you're the top of not only of your class, but in certain categories. And of course, we had 35% of the students who attained a 3.5 or higher GPA, and we ended every year with an awards banquet where we acknowledged the students and what they did. So I'm saying all that to say it was worth even that rough start. Of course, I was named Teacher of the Year at Miami Central High School, as well as ESOL Teacher of the Year at Miami Central High School. So those are some things that, not trying to brag, but just mentioning as relates to the stick-to-itness that sometimes we have to have, even when the dark clouds may be upon us. When we're starting off in a situation, and just having that stick-to-itness to work through and get some folks to rally behind you. So.
Wow. Well, what about pivotal moments in your teaching career or pivotal people? You've already mentioned Ken Tolbert and some others, but let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I would start with pivotal people. It starts with my family. And of course, I mentioned my mom, who was determined to make sure that her kids were provided not only the roof over their heads, but just quality daily life that we had to endure, and making sure that we had the kind of things in place for rearing purposes. I think about my aunt. One of my aunts sang, my mom's sister that is, one of them sang with Casey and the Sunshine Band, and so she gave me an opportunity to play trumpet at one point in the Casey and the Sunshine Band. So yes, do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight, boogie shoes, and all of the rest. I was a part of that band, and because of that, got a chance to go out to California and be a part of the Arsenio Hall show. And that was a treat. And, another one of my aunts, her sister, of course, played in the church. So I would learn how to improvise a little bit with that aunt because she played on the piano. Then I have to give kudos, of course, to my siblings, of which were primarily responsible for teaching me those kind of things that I needed to know just to become a young man. And so my 2 older brothers, and who were both correctional officers, and of course my sister, who worked with the Postmaster General in Miami, was very much so part of my inspiration. When I think about not only my middle school band directors, but I think about teachers along the way beyond my middle school band director that I recognize. His brother, who's a trumpet player, another Rose brother, was very much so responsible for my technical skills that I was able to garner over the years. And then I have some professional friends as well. My first assistant principal at Miami Central, he says, that, Chipman, you're going to have to get rid of some of these elements in order for you to really truly build this program. There's just some bad apples that are here. And so he mentored me in that respect. And he was right there with me the entire time that I was assistant band director, and then, of course, became band director at Miami Central. And then there were others that, just in my circle that I just followed. We call them Chop Chop, but Wellington Gilbert was another name that came to be on the public school level. Alan Fetterman was a music supervisor, band director at Miami Killing. Marilyn Von Sagrin was a music supervisor down in Miami, Florida. You had Howard Doolin, who was the superintendent of music down in South Florida at the time, and created that entire Superintendent's Honors Festival weekend down in Dade County Festival. He's the one that told me at some point, I know you're going to get your master's degree, and here are the two choices that I would for you to consider: Ohio State and University of Illinois. So, of course, Dr. White, my mentor and colleague and friend, attended Illinois. And, of course, Howard Doolin, I think, attended Ohio State. So I had both of those opportunities. And I ended up going with Illinois because I wanted that Big Ten experience on their campus. And so I ended up experiencing that. But those were mentors in my life. And then we start talking about, others on the FAMU campus who helped mentor me over the years. Dr. William Patrick Foster, who was director of bands at FAMU for 58 years. Wow. And then you had the associate professors that were there on campus, the late Charles Bing and Mr. Lindsey Sargent, and of course, Shayla James. All of those were pivotal in my lives and all of my theory and other piano professors that were there. And then I think about my experience at University of Illinois. I was just speaking with Gary Smith, who was one of the professors at University of Illinois, and of course, rest in peace, James Keene, who passed away last year. And we actually invited him to our campus to be one of the clinicians last spring, 2022, for our Wind Band Festival, and that was the first inaugural event of that kind. And he's no longer with us now, but just an inspiration when I was getting my master's degree. And then, of course, finishing up at Florida State for my doctorate degree, my major professor was Dr. Bentley Schallheimer, who we all know and love so much. And he's the one that said, after I got through my coursework, I was basically ABD status, and I said, Dr. Schallheimer, what am I going to write about? And I'm interested in doing something on marching bands and how the sound effects and acoustics work very much so with sometimes the perception of audiences and how they respond, etc. And he said, Shelby, and I know he'll remember this when he sees it, he says, you'll never finish and you'll grow broke trying to go around to all of these schools that you got to collect data from, and you're going to go broke, trying to fly around the country with 3/4 stadiums, dome stadiums, one-sided stadiums, etc. He says, now what is it, Shelby, that's really, really, really your thing that you're passionate about, that you've done all your life? It's right in front of you. And I said, I took a breath. And I said, people. He says, more specific. I said, inner city. He says, more specific. I said, the cultural balance between rural, urban, and suburban populations within inner city schools and within those that are minorities. He says, bingo. He says, you need to do a study on perhaps what is it those teachers who are being very successful with at-risk students, and how we could share that with others who may struggle or just may not know. He says, that's your calling. He says, I know you. That's your spirit. That's what you're about, man. And then that's when I decided to do the survey where I surveyed 500 music teachers, and you responded to my survey back in the day. I remember in 2003, I think it was, when I sent out surveys to 500 randomly sampled band directors or teachers in the state of Florida that I got from the Department of Education in Tallahassee. I received back like a 70% response from the 500. A lot of folks responded, and I used that data to not only write articles and do presentations at FMEA in Texas and Illinois, etc., but it also helped to educate others on what folks are doing that may not know how to go about educating and instructing those who just may be different. And so that was a great opportunity. So those are some folks. And then, of course, you have Jim Croft, who was another one of my colleagues and bestest, as I said, in terms of help to mentor me. I was his assistant with the Big Band Community Orchestra, and I was playing in the group a little here and there, just like I did with the Tallahassee Winds ensemble band that Bentley Schallheimer conducted. And at one of the concerts at the end of the year, Professor Croft turned to the audience, and as he was giving his remarks, he says, I think I'm going to be stepping down. If you know Croft's voice, you know what I'm trying to model. He says, I think I'm going to be stepping down from the Big Band Orchestra, and you could just see everybody kind of gasp. And he says, but I think we're going to be in good hands. I'm going to turn the orchestra over to Shelby Chipman. And I was like standing there like, because he didn't prep me. He didn't prep me, and so I didn't know. And so then everybody started clapping. He says, now I know it has to go before the BBCO board and whatnot, but he's the man to continue the legacy of this community orchestra. So just like that, I became a director of an orchestra in Tallahassee, and that's been now 15 years.
But it wasn't just like that. It was all that came up to it.
Yeah.
Okay. What advice do you want to pass on to either future directors or directors who may be considering leaving the profession or seem to have gotten stuck? Because you never got stuck.
Right. I would say, the wise man or woman would say, without vision, we perish. And so I think it's important for us to have vision. I think it's important for us, as I've learned over my years, to always think about the learning process, yes, but knowing about the people that you are involved with, being able to connect to the people. And a wise man, once said, always think, I think Alfred Watkins, I heard him say this, maybe even here at our FMEA when he gave an address, poco is okay. Little by little progress is good, whether it's that beginning band, whether it's working with your parent boosters, whether it's the administrators and educating them, because sometimes that's half the battle. We have to educate our administrators. We have to educate the people in our midst. And certainly one thing that I've learned over the years is to know that you're not in it by yourselves. There's one thing that I've always done from my first year teaching, as I mentioned earlier, is to make sure that I corral myself amongst people who have somewhat the same vision and that are willing to help. And there's always somebody, especially in our FBA system now, in the FMEA system now, that's there that will be supportive. I mean, I'm looking at this summer conference that we have here now, and it's been amazing, as I have seen already. And I could just imagine these teachers are going to be, and band directors are going to be fired up as they go back to their respective schools and know that they all have unique responsibilities, and of course that responsibility are those students that are under their care and those students and parents looking to the guidance. So I would say to not only just the young band director, but certainly to the young music teacher and band director, make note that you're not in it by yourself. There's always somebody that's willing to help, and if there's not anybody willing to help, find the people in your respective areas that you can reach out to that'll come over and mentor you and maybe rehearse your ensembles, maybe speak to your students about leadership kinds of things, maybe help you with selecting literature that'll allow you to be more successful in terms of how you craft that literature, maybe on conducting, maybe the principles of your marching band shows that you have to get put together, and just being that support person that you wouldn't have thought would have been your support person. But certainly FBA has done some amazing things in recent years, especially to just galvanize all of our members. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why so many members have been a part of the FBA system, because they see the value in the association. So networking, to me, still remains one of the cornerstones with success in our profession.
That is so important. Absolutely. Now, I'm privileged to know you as a friend.
Yes.
But I also know you are a man of faith and you are a man of family. How important is that to your success?
Yeah. I'm very blessed in that, I was born and reared in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME Church in Dade County. And of course, the value system lends itself from us, that church being initially over in the Overtown area, but not, it's not what you're in, it's what you make yourself out to be. Sometimes people may think that because you're in a city, you're not going to be a scholastic achiever, or you're not going to be a person of world culture kinds of things that you should be. And I know, because of the influence of not only my mother, but my grandmother, who I didn't acknowledge earlier, Josephine Champion, is the reason I am who I am today. A lot of folks say that, Chipman, you have a warm spirit about you. You have a personality where you're willing to give. But I know it's because I've been around people like that. And I make sure that I circulate myself around people that are like that. And even with my wife, who's an elementary school teacher and teaching 5th grade in Tallahassee, she's been teaching now 28 years herself. And my son Israel, who's now finished college and doing his thing now with J.P. Morgan Chase and getting ready to actually transition from Columbus, Ohio to Atlanta, Georgia, because he wants to be closer to mom and dad. And so just the blessings of having their support allows me to do the things that I do, where I get away as much as I do. And certainly, without that support and that foundation that I have within the church, and even in Tallahassee where we attend Bethel A&M Church, and I've been a part of the clergy in some form or fashion within the church, and I know that's a major part of why I am and who I am today, because my belief in faith and my belief that it takes the complete person to be an example for others, and certainly I try and do that as relates to what I involve my students in at FAMU. I'm not trying to make them a Chipman, but at the same time, I'm trying to invoke aspects of my personality that they might want to take with them. And, it's because of the love and support that I receive in-house first. That's the only reason I'm able to travel all over the country and share whatever talents that I'm able to share with others. And it's grounded.
Well, you touched on it a little bit, but I want more about what concepts you instill in your students. They're going to go out in the world.
Yes.
And then they've left you, but they're still connected to you.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Oh, that's exciting, because that's why we do what we do. We're in the field of education. We're trying to inspire, we're trying to nurture, we're trying to educate, we're trying to provide those pedagogical things that worked not only back in the day, whether it was textbooks or whether it was takes on how do you breathe, how do you play this phrase, how do you communicate with your audiences. And so when we're on campus, and of course for years I taught the instrumental methods and techniques, so I was in the schools not only as an adjudicator and rehearsing bands, but certainly I would make sure our undergrads were in the schools. If they were in my conducting class or methods classes, they were in the schools learning. Probably some of my students that when you've even adjudicated in Tallahassee would have sat with you, so they're learning some of the systems that are in place, whether it's recording bands and giving comments, completing sheets, going to the band room, seeing how the students come into the classroom and how educators start their classrooms, how they finish their classrooms, and have the expectations for students. And so all of those are very valuable. And then what's even more important is the point that the students have to know what that culture is all about, because every setting is different. Some students may not have eaten last night. Some students may have dealt with a situation where maybe the parents are divorced and it's gotten ugly. Some students may have to visit situations where they have elevators in their homes. And so I'm always trying to get the students to make sure they understand that every teaching situation is different, and it's up to you to identify what your situation is so that you'll know how to garner whatever objectives, lesson plans, expectations for the students that you have before you, not the ones that you have particularly at FAMU, because those grade 5s and 6s that you probably played at FAMU, when you go into that first situation, guess what? You probably won't be playing those grade 6s and those warhorses 7s. So be a believer as to study the game so you'll know how to infuse those things. And so we do a lot of preparation, we do a lot of planning with getting the students to understand different populations that they'll possibly be in. And certainly once they get out there and start teaching, I do make it my business to pick up the phone and call some of especially my younger teachers, just to see how things are going, if I can, possibly visit their schools when I'm on the recruitment trail, and stop by and have lunch with them and just talk about, okay, what's going on? Let's talk to me. What's going on? And so that's a major part of, my DNA in trying to infuse in our students that one, your greatest commodity is your personal commitment on your instrument. And your second, of course, is making sure you infuse whatever those musical things that you're doing to your students, whether it's at the beginning band. And I said, I use myself as an example. As when I was teaching those 10 years in the public schools, 1 at American and 9 at Central, I always taught beginning band. And not only did I teach beginning band, I also played all the respective instruments so that I know how to infuse those and teach those instruments. And so that's another characteristic I think that's very important for those students. And then also those students should be provided even opportunities, if your principal allows, for them to play the guitar, play the string instruments, so that they can be even more worldly, if that applies to them. But certainly, the basic instruments that we all know would be important for them to identify with.
Absolutely, absolutely. How have you managed to be so enthusiastic every time I've seen you? I saw you your first year of teaching.
Yes, yes.
And I've seen you through your public teaching and then through your collegiate years. You're always excited. You're always happy to be there. How do you do that?
I look at things, Tina, the glass is not half empty with me. I look at it from the perspective the glass is half full, and there's a greater light on life. And I think sometimes people look at the dark side of things, and my upbringing, we just didn't look at it like that in our household. I mean, we were always very spirited, and that's not. And I'm not saying that everything was perfect in our life. Lord knows, it was not perfect. We had some tough times growing up. But my mom was always super positive. And I know that's part of my spirit and part of my personality. It comes from the mother and how we were raised. My brothers got on me. They beat me up sometimes, when the mom wasn't there. You know how that goes for in a household, toughen up, Chip, et cetera. But, everything was positive so much. And so I look at things very positive. I always take a deep breath before I make an irrational decision. I'm not impulsive in terms of not making a decision that later on I'm going to regret. Not that I make every decision is perfect, but I make those kind of decisions that I think about first about who is this going to affect, how is it going to affect everybody that may be involved. And I think that's something that's just kind of followed me, just looking at things from the perspective of the glass is half full. And people tend to gravitate with you when they know that you have their sincere interest and they have your sincere interest, and when they know that you mean the best for them. And maybe that's why I was able to build that band program up and get the parents that would come out there and have fish dinner sales, chicken sales, dinners. We did car washes, we did donut sales, M&Ms, you name it, we did it at Miami Central. And we went, we did the Macy's Day Parade that year. We had 275 students, but there were 100 parents that went also. So just that kind of support, I know, is centered around the spirit of the head. They say sometimes, the body ceases to function without the head. Water trickles down. Those kind of, reflections that, your personality will rub off on your students and they'll become a part of you. Some people sometimes say that, man, that just calm demeanor that you have about you, I can see that in your students, or I can see that in this population of people. Even people have made comment during my 2-year tenure now as FMEA President. They've seen some things different even during our board meetings, just the calmness of them and how we've worked through things without a lot of drama, for lack of a better expression. And so I just think that's the spirit of my mother and my grandmother in our rearing. And I try and foster that, but I know how to go there too. So don't get it twisted out there in La La Land. But, just a calm demeanor, spirit. And I want to say too on that note, because you were there for me, I can remember during a very dark time at the moment at FMEA, when you took me in your arms and we walked around the exhibit booths. You saw what was going on. You knew the story that had occurred. We got through the storm, but I'm grateful to you also in getting me through that particular conference. I'll never forget it.
Well, I was honored.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about circles, and you talked about Paris, and you said you were going to come back to that. Let's talk about that circle.
Yeah.
You went to Paris when you were very young, and...
Okay, so we went to Paris my last year. Dr. Foster, of course, and Dr. White got the call from John Paul Gould. They wanted to bring the FAMU band, 250 members, over to Paris for the bicentennial celebration. And so I had just finished my student teacher, and then I was allowed to go on the trip. Full circle last year. I think it was around maybe June, because we only had a month to prepare. Got a call from a gentleman, Max, gave me a call, I forgot his name, but I'll just say you can edit that. But I'll say Max gave me a call, and he says, Dr. Chipman, I'm calling on behalf of Louis Vuitton, and we would like to extend an invitation for the Florida A&M band to come over to Paris, France for the Louis Vuitton men's fashion show. Well, first of all, I should have prepped that with saying when I looked at the phone and I saw 4-111-, I said, oh God, another one of these calls, I'm going to hang up.
Yeah.
And then the spirit said, maybe you shouldn't hang up, just say hello. But when I first, you know how those spam calls can go, you see all these digits. I didn't realize at that time it was an international call. So I said hello, and then that's where the story started. And so he says, well, we're prepared to bring 35 students and 5 of your staff, all, free complimentary travel for a week, and want you to do what you do over there. And then we have some artists, suggested artists that we'd like for you to consider, but not necessarily. And so just like that, the trip happened, and I had an emergency Zoom call with the members of the band. After, of course, I sent the letters to the president and the provost and the dean, chair, etc. And so I had an emergency call with the band to figure out the instrumentation that I had figured out and who would be available, who had passports, who could go for this week. And so it all came to be. We finally got it in place. Out of 35 students, I want to say only like 5 of them currently had passports, and we worked with the individuals down in Miami with customs and whatnot, and they helped to expedite our passports and whatnot. And then there were 5 staff that went, and we had a great time, a memorable experience. The performance, of course, with the Louvre Museum there, and so that was spectacular. That setting, that runway, if you've seen that particular piece, was just amazing. And they had the costume that they provided, attire, wardrobe that they provided the students. And ironically, there was these white sneakers, Louis Vuitton sneakers. So this is a comical moment. And so we were all set, poised, had on our uniforms and whatnot. The show was over, and they said, one thing, Dr. Chipman, unfortunately, the students are not going to be able to keep these Louis Vuitton sneakers. He says, but if you want, you can purchase them for $1,000 each. And I was like, no. So we can do the math on what that would have cost. So we didn't get the sneakers, but we performed at the Louvre in Paris, France for a week. And, the per diem they gave the students, was great. It was a great amount that they received for that week. And they gave the band a nice honorarium towards our scholarships. It's a great trip. I never thought, being the director of bands full circle, from 1989 to 2022, we would have had that opportunity, and there it was. And so we're grateful to those organizers for that opportunity.
Wow. I love circles.
Yeah.
You have some plans coming up for a music academy, I understand.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So, I believe in giving back. I truly believe in anybody that knows my story or have seen me over the years. I'm on different circuits, different platforms, whether it's FBA, FMEA, NAFME, or National Association for Music Education, you name it. Consell, a music clinician, etc. And so I believe in giving back. And so as I'm now in year 34, coming up teaching in the state of Florida, I am thinking about, what's the next chapter? I try and be very vibrant. I try and do as much as I can to support others. And I do want to give back, and if there's an area that I definitely want to give back to, it's where I started. That's just how I'm wired right now. And so I've been thinking about this a lot, praying about it a lot, talking with my family members and of course my wife and my son, who's in business. And so I'm thinking about an academy. And so it started this past week with our Dr. Shelby Chipman's summer marching band camp. And of course, I went back to my roots where I taught for 9 years at Miami Central, the principal, open arms, the current band director. And I thought, let's extend that to not only Dade County, but also Broward and Palm Beach. And so we had a great time there with 250 students for the first year. There were probably about 25 band directors that were in and out during the 4 days. And we showcased the students on the final day, the 5th day, on this past Saturday, the 24th of June. And so it was a great time. Everybody thought it was great. The students performed well. They had a great experience. We had leadership kinds of things. We had empowerment sessions with the students that we talked about. And of course, at the end, we culminated it with a group called the Bahamian Junkanoos. And so we had a spirited time, and it was a part of the piece that I had even one of our conferences that everybody thought was just very jovial and got everybody kind of spirited into the swing of things. And then I said, it doesn't stop there. And so I have been talking with my family members, I decided to think about an academy where we can find an enriching environment that would keep music alive, as well as help to mold those young men, especially, in my opinion, that we need to keep our arms, gravitated around the young men of today, because I've seen the populations on many university campuses where there are less young men that are going off to school for whatever reasons. And I said, if I can be a beacon of hope to help that in any small way, where maybe 10 more young men a year are going off to college down the line, then I want to be that vehicle to assist them. But not just the young men, young ladies as well. But that is going to be a major part of my platform as I start to write up a perspectives and start to outline some things. Right now, I'm thinking about 6th through 12th grade, a music academy for inner city students or people who would like to be on board and not only get the fine ingredients of musical expectations that we will provide, but also all the other subjects, the 3 R's that will come about. And I'm going to start putting together a team, starting with the dean of students. That would be the person that facilitates that group, and for each age level, whether it's the middle school class or the high school class. We have my family members that are searching for a building as we speak, and the goal is within the next 4 to 5 years to have this program in place. My niece currently has her own daycare, and it's a very successful daycare, so she's doing some research for me in the area of what the state of Florida is going to require for those things. And then I'll be speaking, of course, with my good buddy and colleague and friend Fred Schiff at All County Music about the instrument piece, and along with Michael Campias with Conselva Music, who I'm a clinician with, so that we can start to line up the instrument aspect of this program. And then we'll do a feasibility study, send something out to see, who would be interested. And of course, I'll be networking with my good old FBA friends, particularly those in South Florida, about what do they think about a project or an opportunity like this. So that's the 5-year goal. Not saying I'm going to retire in 5 years, but when I do retire, which will probably be in the next 7 to 10 years, then that's what I would like to infuse. Why I've still got a lot of drive, a lot of determination, a lot of go-get-'em kind of spirit.
Oh, that's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we've reached the end of our time. Do you have one more thing you'd like to tell us?
Well, I'd just like to say, when in doubt, everybody, just take a breath. Take a breath. You already know who you are. If you don't know who you are, take a breath. Think about who you'd like to come to be, and be that person, and inspire somebody. It could start with 1, it could start with 10, it can start with 50. But start one at a time, and remember, poco a poco, it's nothing wrong with little by little progress. Whatever that progress may be that you think you need to have under that room where you're teaching, poco a poco, it's fine. Be encouraged and stay curious.
Stay true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Consistent.
Stay curious.
Thank you so much. But it's time to say goodbye. We're all inspired by having this interview, and I feel like we know you a little bit better. All right? So, goodbye.
Goodbye, Tina. Happy trails. Love you.